coming up on Four Best.
So, question one, is there an equivalent of a rodeo clown during these events?
Yeah, good question. So I guess you could consider me the rodeo clown because I'm the guy who's out there in a safety vest who probably doesn't belong out there trying to distract people from doing their job. And so just like the rodeo clown distracts the bull, I guess you could say that that's kind of what I'm doing out there.
Steel town roots in a story to spin. Pittsburgh streets in our bones. The four best parts, the four best hearts. This month we live it loud. This month we break the cloud.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. And welcome to episode 2 of the Four Best podcast. I am Isaac Scott, and I am also joined by...
I'm Sergey, your neighborly friend.
I'm Nate Kravitz, the older man in the group. Hey, I'm Matt Kravitz, the pretty one.
All right. Yep, the pretty one. And hey, so we are 4 best friends that have started a podcast called The 4 Best. And if you want to learn all about that, I encourage you to go back to episode 1, where we go into detail of where we came up with this idea. But essentially, we are 4 best friends that grew up together in Pittsburgh. Now we are doing this podcast where we come together and we talk about the best part of our month. With that, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to jump right in. And I'm going to actually shake it up a bit. And I am going to invite Mr. Sergey, your new best friend, Black Whore, to the microphone to share what his best is for this month.
That's a lot of pressure. All right. Well, I think something that I've been thinking about and reflecting on, and actually right before this podcast, we were spending some time with people that we've gotten to know over time here in the neighborhood. I don't know if you all have been following the ongoing loneliness pandemic that's been going on, the silent pandemic, where a lot of people who are our age have a difficult time, especially males, I think, making friends. It's difficult to build those types of relationships. It's awkward. Sometimes it's just difficult to open up, I think, and feel like you're going to be comfortable with that other person and make sure that, there's a trusting relationship there and all of that. And so I totally understand that. We experienced some of that, Kelsey and I, when we lived at Squirrel Hill. We had our first home there. We just weren't building a lot of really close relationships besides the people we already knew. And when we moved up here to the north, we were starting completely fresh. We partially moved up here because our family was closer to where we were living. In the first year or so, we really didn't know anybody, and it took a little while for us to finally start getting to know people. But once we started hanging out at the playground, there were other parents there. And something that I picked up on was just kind of being in the same place as someone else.
Are you trying to say that shared experience builds relationships?
Yeah, I think that a shared experience in parenting, like, so when you have, I don't know if you guys, I'm just going to openly talk about this and just see where this goes. Okay. So I think when your kids start going to school, there's a sort of sense of like, yes, we're all in it together, but you're sort of, you're setting up play dates and you're talking to people and you're inviting them for birthdays, but it's difficult to get beyond that like superficial relationship, right? Somebody might invite you over to 4th of July and you'll have maybe lunch or something like that. But like to go further than just that, I think is difficult. And something that I was really surprised that we were able to do with a couple of neighbors around here, 2 specifically, was to be able to start going over to their home. We actually got invited over for a birthday party. It was, I think, their son Julian's six-year-old birthday party at the time. And they asked us to stay. Like, we got to stay for a longer period of time than others. They're like, hey, do you guys want to have dinner with us? And we did that. And then they were like, hey, we have leftovers the following night. Do you guys want to come back? And that was such an unusual experience to have, where people invite you over and then they let you stay past the normal amount of time. I don't know. It had been a very long time since experienced that. Like, obviously, when we were kids, right, like your parents would invite us over and be like, hey, do you want to have leftovers? Do you want to come over for sandwiches? Do you want to hang out? We're having, appetite, whatever. Like, that was really cool. But when you're an adult, that seems to happen a lot less frequently. And when it happened with some of the neighbors we have up here, they're just awesome people. We started getting into a routine of just coming over and having dinner. And I came from one of those dinners tonight, and I was reflecting on how awesome it is to be able to be invited to somebody's home, to be able to sit on their couches and feel comfortable, not feel like you have to make up stories. Sometimes we're just laying back. We're sitting or either watching a movie. Some of us are on our phones. Sometimes we're playing board games, and it never feels stressful. to like put on a show, to have topics to talk about. You just show up, sometimes with cheese and meat. We set up a charcuterie board in real time, and we're having a great evening. I feel like that's difficult to find. And I guess I'm just really, really thankful for that because you guys remind me of that. Like there are relationships where you don't necessarily have to be superficial, that you can go beyond that. And it is also possible to develop that as an adult. That's my good thing, is to recognize that it's not easy to build relationships when you're older, but it is possible. And it requires somebody to really extend beyond just the typical like, hey, do you want to come over for the holidays? But say, hey, do you want to hang out for dinner and like stay afterwards and play games, and follow up with that? Keep following up.
So awesome, Serge. I see this so much in my patients that they're like, I don't know how to make new friends. I moved to the area. I've been living here for 5 years and I don't know anyone. It's one of my first questions with everyone that I talk to is, do you have friends or family in the area? And sometimes I'll say, like, so very few of them say, yes, I have this group of friends, that these people that, and it's like, maybe there's part of a reason that they're coming to see me for their mental health. People do not know how to make new relationships. And I think you're right. It got way worse after the pandemic, that it just feels awkward for people, instead of like this, what you experienced, this like natural, like, let's just figure out how to be friends. I think people have maybe become more particular, much more anxious about like, am I going to, impress people? Is it going to go well? Or maybe that fear that like, if it isn't natural, not following through on it, like sitcoms of the past that we would see where people were such good friends with their neighbors, and people would just come over. That it's so nice to have that, but it takes some work. And you guys have put in that work. It sounds really awesome. I know that you spend a lot of time with your neighbors, and not just that, but your community. You do such a great job of getting involved.
That's spot on, Nate. That's exactly it. Is we would be exposed to all these shows where you did see people hanging out, and you're like, oh, I want some of that. And as you get older, you're sort of, where can I get some of that? I think food is a fantastic way to do it, and we've been able to bond over food and beer and everything else. I'm very thankful for that, because you're right. There's a lot of people out there that are figuring out, how do I get some of this, because I need it.
A really great thing to talk about, just kind of that awareness of like friendship and the challenges of it. When you're young, it kind of develops naturally just by proximity, right? You're in school, so like your friend sits next to you. Even as you get older, if you work in a location, that can generate friendships. I like I had built some friendships through work, and then I don't go into an office anymore, so I don't see people, and it's like way harder to actually have those relationships because you're not having like conversations with people in between doing actual work, and like typing something to someone, it does not result in the same sort of genuine connections. You're not getting the same sort of interactions. So it is really kind of cool to have that, especially from your neighbors and stuff. I see like my mom's building relationships with people by like walking around her dog, which was the whole point of her getting the dog, or it's one of the major factors of it. My in-laws, they're active and interact with like their neighbors and stuff. I was hoping for some of this, but it's so much more of an active effort when you're an adult to get that. You can't be passive to build friendships. I think we are starting to get some like new relationships from activities that our kids are doing, but it's long road, and it's not always easy depending on like your personality type to get those.
Yeah, and you have to be pretty vulnerable, to put yourself in those positions, right? Like you may not match up on a lot of different qualities, or even sometimes you're not even sure necessarily the values, right? Like of other people, and how you'll feel around them when you learn more. So it's definitely it's tricky. Because kudos to your mom for walking around and like making friends. I thought that was the coolest thing, that she has like this litany of like CMU students that she keeps in touch with, and all of these people. She is honestly one of the most impressive social people that I've seen in her age. Very healthy.
She knows like everyone in a 2-block radius because she's walking her dog, walking Sass all around. She's like, oh yeah, whoever this dog's owner, they basically just know each other by who their dog is. It's kind of like, it honestly is like kids, where it's like, oh, this is Kyle's mom or whatever.
You almost think about the phases of life, right? And I think Matt kind of talked about like the proximity relationships when you're in school. But I think even when you get married, it's like now your whole focus is on your spouse and developing that relationship and building a home and becoming comfortable. And then you move on, you start having kids. And then from there, they go into school. And then you find that there's this kind of loneliness that you talked about, right? Where it's just like, it's like, hey, not that you don't have that relationship with your spouse, not that you don't have other friendships, but it's like you kind of live vicariously through your kids, and then you don't have that adult connection as a result. And so I think it's a really good call out, and really it's a true treasure to stumble upon, to have, a couple or couples in your close vicinity that you can have that type of chemistry and connection with. Because I know even in our relationship, Rachel and I talk about it often, that as we go back through the years, obviously our kids are a lot older now, but in our younger years, we constantly run into different relationships with people. And it was like we could never get synced up with both couples. It was like either there was like a connection with the wife, or there was a connection with the husband, and we couldn't seem to get two that would be compatible. But then when you find that, you kind of like latch onto it, and you have more lifelong friends as a result of it. But I think it's great that you're able to put yourself out there and identify that. And I know that you were kind of talking through the example of, kind of being at the school and kind of being out there and just being visible to, have somebody reach out and be like, hey, why don't you come over and do this? And I guess the question I would have for you is, I'll ask you this in hindsight and I'll ask you this in foresight, right? So hindsight, looking back on that moment, would you have done anything different to maybe accelerate or maybe build some of these more relationships faster? Or do you think that it had to come about through osmosis, kind of the way that it developed?
Man, I think the best way to put this is, and you guys made this joke before, that one of the neighbors is a little bit of a combination of like all three of you. And that is so true. So his name is John, and maybe at some point he'll listen to this. But John is a like extrovert. Like he is just the guy that pulls in the introverts. And I think of you the same way, Isaac. Right? Like you're really good at keeping us all together, even when there were times where probably there wasn't much going on between us that we shared. Like just on a day-to-day, our experiences were so different. So I think it's difficult because I'm not sure if I would have been the person. Actually, I don't think I would have initiated it. First off, I don't think of my cooking skills at that time to have been very interesting. So I would have been a little bit shy and, again, vulnerable in showing like that I couldn't make something that would have wanted people to come in and stay. But this person did. This person clearly cooks and he loves doing it for people. And that just brings everybody together. So I think his confidence and his knowing of like, hey, I like these people. These are like fun. They've got some, interesting, relatable things. The kids are the same exact age. And they also live 2 minutes down the street, which is super convenient. Come hang with us. It's hard for me to say for sure. I don't know if I would have done it, but I'm glad there's extroverts out there like you that are doing it for others.
Oh, very good. And then the last question I would just have is really about foresight. Knowing what you know now, knowing the relationship, knowing that connection, knowing how important it is for you, how have you and Kelsey kind of grasped onto that? And has that changed the way that you look for new people who might be looking for that type of relationship, looking for that type of connection where they don't have?
It's difficult to replicate that because there's a little bit of, I don't know if it's boundaries or walls or people are just so busy or they have their own friends. I know that we've tried that with a different couple here and it's, it didn't necessarily work out. So I think it really is a little bit of timing, a little bit of personality mix, and a little bit of vulnerability, seeing what's possible when you do put yourself out there.
No, love it. Thank you, Serge. Okay, well, great. We'll just keep moving down the list. And I'm going to toss the ball over to Mr. Nathaniel Thumper Kravitz.
Hey, guys. Thanks. So I know that it's going to be tough as we do this podcast to not just keep bringing up stuff about our kids as being some of our greatest things, but I'm going to jump into that anyway. And what I'm super excited about is happening recently. One of the best things for me is that my nephew, whose name is Gabriel, and I've gotten to play a role in helping to raise Gabriel. He's been a very close part of our family. He's lived with us at times. My kids, while he's their cousin, they kind of joke around and call him like a broke uncle or something like that, a mixture of a brother, cousin, and uncle, because he is a bit older than them. He's 20. He's getting really close to 21. And what I'm most excited about is that he got recognized during a big company meeting recently. So let me dive into this a bit. In high school, was working for this pizza place, and he kept working there after he graduated, and he just did a really great job of taking on this job and continuing to hold it and to do a good job, to be really responsible for it. After he graduated high school, I was telling him, look, if you either got to go to college or you got to get a better job. You can't just get stuck at this pizza place. I was really worried that was going to happen. And you'd get too comfortable. And I've seen a lot of people do that. He tried out the college scene. It's just not the right thing for him, which makes sense. That's absolutely fine. But he needed to move on. And unfortunately, he started to enter a market that was kind of getting tougher and tougher out here. But earlier this year, he finally got a job with a big painting company. It's a pretty big one that works up and down in Oregon, up and down I-5. And this last month, during one of their business meetings, he didn't get Employee of the Month, but he did well enough that they said, hey, we also want to recognize that we had a runner-up this month, which is not something that they typically do. And they called him up and put Gabe up there, and the owner of the company recognized that. And then even, I guess he like whispered down to him and he said, hey, you're not wearing any of our stuff. And Gabe just said, well, yeah, I don't have any. He's like, we got to get you a jacket. The guy said, hey, get this guy a jacket. So they're going to get him a jacket because they want him representing him. They want him out there. So I'm super proud of him. And it's just made me think about all this kind of parenting stuff and something that my wife and I have been thinking about and paying attention to, of launching into adulthood. And so Gabe has been working on launching into adulthood, having a job that will help support him. And he's looking at getting married. So he's got to support his wife, who's finishing up her degree and working on her degree. But there's just so much value for me in seeing that. And I figured that you guys might have some things to talk about your thoughts on launching and even continuing to progress in life, especially this is almost like your specialty, Isaac, I think is having people be led into bettering themselves, especially professionally.
Yeah, I can definitely jump in, and I'm working through this right now. I might have even mentioned it on one of our previous conversations or podcasts, but I'm going through this right now with my son, who is 19 years old. And I think the whole launching protocol is a very interesting piece. And I think it's probably so interesting for us because I know we each had different ways that we launched. Mine was a little more abrupt, and this will be an ongoing joke that I have with my dad, Tom Scott, who I know he's going to listen to this episode. He always lived by the rule of 18 and out. And so it was, as soon as you turn 18, you get out. And while it wasn't exactly 18 when I graduated high school, I pretty much moved out on my own. And then he packed up, and my stepmom and my stepsister moved to Pittsburgh. So basically I got dumped in every apartment, and then they left. So it was pretty much a one-way door. And then had to go figure it out, right? And so struggled a lot, especially I got engaged quick, and then Rachel and I got married, and we were in this newlywed struggles of the first several years of our life, and it was really tough. It was really tough financially. It was really tough building this new relationship. Then we had Isaiah come along, a year or two later, and then we had to provide for this family. I say all that because your comment really resonated with me, Nate, where you're talking about the advice that you're giving to Gabe. And I think we're so hyper aware of that because we know how difficult it is. And I wish that there were times when I talk even with Isaiah that I could just like almost project my mind out there for him so that he could see it and he could understand just how hard it is when you're not set up for success. Because I know Rachel and I, we got out on our own, and you just figure, hey, you're going to have the same lifestyle that your parents had. You have no concept of money. You have no concept of what life costs. You have no concept of reality. And then reality hits you in the face. And so I almost think at times we catch ourselves almost over-indexing and, maybe being too hands-on versus letting them kind of struggle in those things that kind of made us who we are today. So it's a balancing act for sure. And I'm rambling a little bit, but the part that I'll kind of get to is that I think what is so great is that you want to guide, you want to encourage the younger generation to set themselves up for success, right? And I think we even talked about in the last episode when I was talking about, the doctorate degree or education. And it's just like, it helps set you apart from someone else. And so I think even like in Gabe's case where it's like, hey, he's going out, he's learning a trade in painting. And that's funny because that's something that, Mac and I did when we were in high school. And it's a life skill that you'll be able to take with you in or not in a career. But it is something that you can build specialty in. It's something that you can become great in. And it's something that sets you apart from your average person. And so I think it's so cool, especially with Gabe. I mean, we all know Gabe, just such a charismatic guy and great head on his shoulders. And your fingerprints have been all over him, just as that male role model that he could really look up to. And someone who he can look to for advice and who can kind of guide him down the right path. And so I think being able to see him kind of take that and find his own way is super cool. And it's awesome to see them start to be successful in it. So I mean, I don't know. It's not that you were asking for advice or anything. I just think that the approach that you're taking with him and how you're there to support him, you're there to encourage him, but then you're pushing him to do more and be better and celebrate the wins along the way is really the best thing that you can possibly do for him, which I think is just awesome. And I think that's why he's continuing to thrive and go in this direction. And I think keeping that real life out in front of him so that he can see it, I think is going to be key.
I think you're right, and I love it. What I heard the most in all of that is I get to take some of the credit for his success, and that's perfect. Just like I was playing a real life Tamagotchi, that when his heart levels are hitting 3 or whatnot, I'm really it's because of me, and so I'll make sure that he knows that also.
Yeah. It's being recorded, so not just him, but everybody's going to know.
If it's on the internet, it's real.
First off, I'm proud of Gabe. I think that is awesome that he's thriving. I think we all need that boost when we first get out from somebody that's not our parents or our parents' friends or our relatives, somebody external that gives us that motivation to say, hey, you're doing things in the world that matter. You're doing a good job. Like it makes you feel valuable. And I think what I'm curious about, and I know, Nate, your kids are a little bit younger than Isaac's, but, Mac and I, we got youngins. My daughter's 10 and my son is 6. And so I'm just wondering, is there any kind of advice that you would give when you think about going back a few years to start thinking about how do you set people up on that roadmap, on that trajectory to be ready to better conquer the world and when they have to go out there at 18 or 21?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And once again, wouldn't say I'm a pro at it by any means, but and Isaac probably has insight into this too. It's just like everyone has their own strengths and assets. And Gabriel's, one of his strengths is that he's really willing to like kind of try something new. And when he does do it, he can really put a lot into it. And so he was starting to think about like, I want to do the trades. And so we were looking at trades. We were having him, he was applying, and things weren't really coming up because a lot of that, like, you have to know people to get in. So he'd be calling people and getting rejected. But then he had an opportunity to check out this painting thing, and he's jumped into it and he's become an expert in it. And then even to the point where it's like, okay, we're doing a painting inside. He's like, let me come and show you how to do it. So I love letting people shine with what they're good at. It's something that I use at work with my patients and everything that I try to do. I try to ask people information about what they're good at also, because I'm going to learn a lot, but also that's where you get people to really open up and shine. So just continue to encourage the things that people are good at and push them to use those in wonderful ways.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add to that, Serge, is I think keep in mind is that it's okay to fail and it's okay to learn and it's okay to grow and it's okay to develop, right? And I think people feel like they go down these paths. And again, I'll go back to using Isaiah. Like, he originally went to Grove City College thinking that he wanted to go down this road of mechanical engineering. And after a year of doing that, he was like, man, I don't want to do this. And, I have the utmost respect for him for identifying that and saying that, because there is a lot of people that I come across in the workplace who felt that way, but they just gritted it out and then hated it and then ended up doing something totally different. And so now you have this degree that you hate, you have this specialty that you don't want to go use, you have tons of college debt that you accrued because of it, and now you're going and doing a job that you probably didn't even need to have that type of degree for. So I think it kind of goes back to the old adage of like, hey, if you're going to fail fast and move on to something different. Don't just continue to linger with it. But I also think that specialty that Nate is talking about is key, where it's like, find out what you love, find out what you're passionate about, and find out what you're good at. But also keep in mind that there's a difference between jobs and hobbies. And so you want to also have those hobbies that are really fun and kind of a relief and a reprieve for you. If you start doing that all the time, then it starts to feel like a job and you start to lose that joy. But I think finding things that you can excel at, you can be different in, will help set you apart from the rest of the crowd. And I think it's important with your kids too to think about the future. I think I've mentioned before, Isaiah and I had a lot of conversations in the past about him wanting to be a farmer over the years. And, it was fine that he wanted to do that. But as he was starting to get to being a junior in high school, it was like, okay, well, hey, let's talk about what that really means from a financial standpoint, right? Because it's not just the going and hanging out at my grandfather's house on the weekend and driving tractors around and fixing tires and running things. And then when they break, we just go fix them. And it's this fun thing. It's like, hey, all that stuff costs a ton of money and all that stuff is a lot of work. And being a farmer is the most incredible job that takes an immense amount of effort and probably has the least reward to show for it when it comes to financially. And so you're working 12, 14, 16-hour days, and you're making $50,000 a year in some cases, So I think it's something that you just want to balance out and just be like, hey, if that's what you want to do and that's what you're passionate about, great. Just know that that's what you're getting into and understand that that's the lifestyle that you want. That's the job that you want. That's the future that you want. And if it's not, then find something different. And the great part about living in the country that we do is that you have that freedom to go do that. You can literally do whatever you want to go do and make it your life.
So I just want to call out something here, something that I think all of you guys work really hard at, have done such a incredible and meaningful job at, which is building that foundation. So our kids, Gabe, success is not going to just happen randomly. Having that foundation of love and support and structure and stability, that's what allows our kids to be able to grow and learn and make informed decisions and take risks at different times. I think one of the major things is they've established that and they've built that. Nate, especially for Gabe, I think you and Heidi and his grandmother did so much work to help add stability and a real meaningful foundation for Gabe that may not have existed otherwise. I know there's a lot of tumult in his life otherwise. He would not be where he is today without that support and that stability. And that's something that was provided to him not through his mom and dad, but through other family members. And I think that's something that's really important. And I know that's why you're so proud of him too, is because you've put so much love into him. So seeing his successes brings you that joy. So it's just kind of cool. And it's worth sort of calling out that that foundation, that stability, that love, that support that we build early on is what allows for our kids to succeed and grow and, be willing to take risks, be willing to have failures because they know that, they've learned from us that having failures does not mean that there's something wrong with them. It just means that something needs to change, that they need to maybe approach things differently or choose a different path.
I think those are really great points, Mac. Yeah, and that without getting into a whole lot of detail about what's happened with Gabe personally in his life today, he's had things really tough, and family, especially my mother-in-law Lori, really got around and helped him out a lot. And I was lucky to get to be a part of his life and a male figure that, and I had it pretty easy to do that, where I didn't have to do a lot most of the time of more the kind of punishment redirection, but I got to do a lot of the encouraging kind of things. He had the safety, especially because of my mother-in-law, where he lives, and is to be able to make mistakes and have failures, so that if there was a problem, he was still going to be okay. And he had to know that, and he tested that sometimes, especially when he was younger. But he's matured a lot, so he's a great guy.
Right, a good way of Mac stealing the credit back and making sure it's distributed out equally to the appropriate people instead of giving it all to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, 90% me, 10% everyone else. So, hey guys, this seems like a great point in the conversation to jump over to someone else's best. And I'd like to invite Mr. Isaac Scott to tell us his best from the past month.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Appreciate that. And so I am going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about work because this last month we had kind of a fun thing take place at work. I just want to share. It's something that's kind of unique that some people may not know about. First off, the role that I have, but then also the individuals that I work with. I mentioned on the last podcast that I work with PepsiCo and have been with them for 21 years. My current role is that I actually am kind of leading and supporting the field transportation team for Frito-Lay. And so have the opportunity to work with some just incredible people have a whole huge team of over-the-road truck drivers all across the country that are moving product to and from all of the Frito-Lay facilities out to the stores. And one of the cool kind of employee engagement events that we do every year is we have what we call our truck rodeos. And so these are actually organized events that we have at each of our sites where our drivers will compete against each other in like an obstacle course race with these big tractor trailers. So if you think of like, the 53-foot trailers driving on the highways, they will actually take those into a parking lot and they'll design a course where the drivers will have to do all different types of obstacles and compete for scores on how well they do it and how fast they do it. And then they also have to do like pre-trip inspections, just like they would do on a normal day, and to see if they can find defects that are planted on, a truck and trailer that's sitting there as well. So the cool part about that is that this all started as training that we have to do annually for the drivers, but then we kind of make it this fun activity where they can compete with each other. And so we built this over the years where we have what we call these local rodeos, and then we have region rodeos, and then we have a national rodeo. So the local rodeos, all the drivers will compete at each of our 42 traffic centers that we have across the country. And then basically the top 3 from those locations will go and compete in a regional activity. And then the top 3 from the regional activity will go compete in a national activity. So really just a fun event. But this last month we had our regional event. So I got to partake in several of those around the country. And I'll just tell you, guys, it is just amazing what these guys are able to do with a tractor trailer out there in these obstacle courses. And for me personally, it just gives me such an appreciation for what they do each and every day, because we all know from driving on the roadways that the roads aren't getting safer. They're becoming more dangerous with drivers getting more distracted and having trouble driving out there. And so you got these professional drivers that are constantly on the lookout for these distracted drivers, and they're able to take these kind of defensive, driving positions so that they help save other people's lives as a result of it. We just have an incredible group of drivers at Frito-Lay. We put their skill sets on full display in these rodeos. So while it's a lot of fun for us, it's actually real life for the drivers each and every day that they're out there. So just kind of a neat event that I got to partake in and just get to see these drivers at their best. I just thought I would share that. I thought that was kind of a cool thing that happened over this last month.
That sounds really cool. I have 2 questions, I think. So question 1, is there an equivalent of a rodeo clown during these events? And question 2, can you describe what your favorite event to watch was?
Yeah, good question. So I guess you could consider me the rodeo clown, because I'm the guy who's out there in a safety vest who probably doesn't belong out there trying to distract people from doing their job. And so just like the rodeo clown distracts the bull, I guess you could say that that's kind of what I'm doing out there.
You must be liked that they didn't run you down, so that's good.
Yeah, yep, that's right. And then the second, my favorite obstacle is that watching these drivers, so they have to do a parallel park exercise with a tractor trailer. And so they literally pull this tractor trailer up just like you would do in a driving test, right? Where you have like these construction barrels and they pull up alongside of it and they have to back it in and weave it into a parking spot that's basically just bigger than the truck itself. And it's just like amazing. It's just amazing to me how they're able to handle this big piece of equipment just like it's a car. Like in most cases, they drive it better than most people drive their car on a day-to-day basis. So it's really just incredible to watch. I'm just in awe of their expertise.
Something I wanted to comment on was, I think you said this is like technically mandatory education, right? And I find this to be a fascinating evolution, hopefully in more companies. But, so much mandatory education becomes like a click-a-thon, right? Like you're just trying to get through whatever it is. I mean, obviously I'm in a corporate job, so there's a lot of people sitting in front of computers trying to get through slides that they're not even paying attention to. I have to give the company a lot of kudos that they make it fun, right? Like people want to learn things when it's enjoyable, when it becomes part of something that they do every day, that it's not just another module that they have to kind of get through in the next 2 hours. That you actually make it entertaining. I have to wonder, Isaac, how much input have you actually had on the design or like the creation of this? Did you make it up yourself, or were you on a group of people that were like, hey, you're assigned to make this education interesting and memorable?
Yeah, it's a good question. And no, like I won't take any credit for it. So we have an incredible team that works through this from like our safety standpoint. And this is this is a longer standing thing. So the mandatory training that I talked about, we call it close quarter maneuvering, right? It's something that we put our drivers through annually so that we graded them on these different obstacles. And then we could see, hey, you probably need a little extra help here. So we're going to have a trainer help you with this area. And so what we started finding is there was like this friendly competition that was erupting. And so it was really just kind of developed over time into this rodeo scene where drivers started competing against each other. Then we started formalizing it. And so again, we had the local one and then we did the regional ones. And only about probably 3 or 4 years ago, we started this national one where now we bring the top drivers to Dallas to our corporate office, and then they get to compete we have these big like wrestling belts that have, like the world champion on them of the rodeo world champion belt that they're able to take back with them to their location and kind of show off. So definitely a high level of pride for them to show it off. And at the regional and the national events, they also are able to bring like a +1 with them. So a lot of them will bring their spouse, where they're able to kind of show off what they do on a day-to-day basis there as well. So really just it turned into a really great employee engagement event.
Yeah, those are hard to get right. So kudos to you, buddy.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I think that does sound really cool, and it's neat that Frito-Lay does that. I know that there's other truck rodeo types of things elsewhere, but I agree with you. I've seen even just on the street sometimes when I see trucks going around in semis, just their how adept they are at operating these huge vehicles. It's really neat. I know that it takes a lot of practice and skill, and sometimes that's not recognized by maybe our community that would just say, oh, these are just drivers or something like that. But they really do a cool job. And I've seen some kind of videos and stuff of some truck rodeo things and people operating these semi trucks in ways that are just astounding, because if someone hasn't driven with a trailer before and backed it up, they don't understand just how difficult it can be and getting your mind around it and your depth perception and all of these things. So that's really cool. I'm glad you got to be a part of that.
Yeah. No, and what's cool, Nate, is like you mentioned about we are not the only ones to do this. So if you guys were to guess, when do you think the first truck rodeo started without getting on your computers and Googling it? Take your hands off your mouse. I see you. You're on video. I can see you. Take a guess.
I would guess. I was going to say, I guess it was actually probably a long time ago. Did we have really big semi trucks back in 52? Well, you know what? Even like military and stuff like that, maybe even smaller trucks. I'm going to say 39.
39?
Yeah, because there were log trucks.
Okay. What'd you say, Matt?
27.
Yep, they haven't been invented yet.
Haven't happened yet, but in 2 years.
Yeah, I'm foreshadowing what's going to be happening in 2 years.
I'm going to say right after World War II. So let's just say 47. We're building up our industry because we've got the monies to do it.
Yes.
I'm glad you said 47 and not after World War II, 1920. So you passed the history lesson for today. So the actual, the first recorded truck rodeo was actually by the American Trucking Association back in 1937. So
it's so
you're
close.
Very close, Nate. Very close.
Is that what caused the stock market crash?
No, probably the recovery. You think? Yeah. But what was so neat about it is like they started this because it was basically, I forget the exact person who came up with it, but the person who was leading the ATA at the time is basically they developed this thing because they wanted to showcase the incredible skill sets of the truck drivers. So even back then in the 90s, they were just very impressed at the skill sets that these professional drivers had out there. And it was a way for them to kind of show it off and showcase and compete against each other. So kind of neat that, Frito-Lay has started embarking on the same type of legacy over the years and just investing back in the drivers as a result of that. So it's just kind of a cool thing. Little trivia for you, Serge. All right. Well, I think that takes us 3 out of our 4 best. And so I think there is one more individual on this call who we want to hear from so that we can bring this show down for a landing.
I want you to acknowledge him as the pretty one.
Yeah. So you all know him as Matt Kravitz, but we know him as the pretty one of the group.
It's true.
So with that,
I look so good, guys.
I'd like to pass it over to Michael, but we know him as Mac, a.k.a. the man who has the face built for radio.
Sure do. I wish I had the voice for radio.
You do? You got a great one. All right. Tell us about your best, Mac.
All right. So this past month, Eileen and I and actually Sergey and his wife Kelsey all went out to see a show together. It's a play. It's called Noises Off. It's my favorite play. Comedy. It's a farce. It's very funny. It's a hysterical show. I first saw it sometime in the early 2000s. I don't exactly remember what year. It was written by Michael Frayn. It came out, I think, in the 80s was when it was originally written. It's just funny. It's 3 acts. It's a farce about making a farce and just like a disaster going on because of the relationships of the actors with one another. So getting to see one of my favorite plays of all time, again, great in and of itself. It was a really good production of the show. I think this is my 4th time seeing it, and I would say it's the 2nd best performance I've seen of it. And it's, there are just points during the show where you just start laughing for like 5 minutes straight. It's such a joy. It just made me so happy to see one of my favorite shows. It's not something that's available most of the time. That's how plays work. It's like you have to see it when it's happening because otherwise the opportunity is gone. This show's probably maybe gets reproduced every like 15 years or something is what it seems like. So it's probably not going to be seen again by me for a really long time. So just getting this opportunity was awesome. And then, to add to it, I got to have a great date night with my wife and spend extra time with Serge and Kelsey. So we went out for like drinks right before the show and just, really got to enjoy each other's company, got to do something that we don't normally get to do. And it was just kind of like a nice evening. It was a nice date night.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there because I was on the other half of that. It was a really nice date night. And I think I appreciate the fact that I guess I should mention this. I don't think I knew that was your favorite show. So that's a cool little factoid. And for the audience that's listening, Noises Off is actually really neat. Here's why. I don't know how much you know about it, Isaac or Nate, but the idea is that it is a group of actors putting on a play. And so you get to see the play in 3 acts, and the stage revolves. And so the first act, you see them playing the play itself. And then on act 2, you see what's happening backstage, which is a complete chaotic mess. I was in this play in college. I think you all, at least Isaac and Mac, you came to see me. I played Selsden, the drunk burglar. And it really is funny. And it does take a lot of work and effort because there's a lot of like slapstick, humorous comedy going on, and things have to be timed out exactly the right way for it to work. If anything falls through, it kind of just doesn't have that same hit. But yeah, it's a wonderful show. And Mac, it's so cool to be able to share that with you and Eileen and Kelsey, and to be able to go out. I know we live like 30 minutes away from each other, which does kind of put up a barrier, and our kids have different bedtimes. But I love when we take the time to like share in these kind of experiences together, especially when they're that meaningful to you. So Mac, I'm glad you suggested to do it.
What you're saying is the choreography in this particular production was really spot on. It just like everything moved so fluidly. If you saw it in real life, like if people are doing what they're doing in real life, you'd be like, well, that doesn't seem realistic, because like it's impossible to recreate. But they time things out so neatly. The actors' choices in this production were particularly like notable and worthwhile. It's just really cool and really funny. So if you ever get a chance to see Noises Off, do it. You won't be disappointed. It is such a cool show. Yeah, and it's just hysterical. Just is.
Question, Mac, I think we all know you're a theatrical guy. Might have not been in productions for a little while. Would you consider coming back to the stage to do a Noises Off and maybe like a community play? And who would you want to play in that Noises Off if you could?
Personally, if I were to do acting, like I would especially in a comedy, my goal would be to be the straight man in it. Like I think that would be the funniest position, the funniest role. So I'm trying to think of who the straight man is in it. I think the answer to that might be, I think he's the Carpenter character is Tim, where he's like really trying to keep things together, and just kind of like do his job. And as like as the acts move on, as the show moves on, like his job seems to expand more and more. So he's taking on like a larger role, but he's still just trying to like fall within those steps. And I always like the idea of the straight man in comedy because themes aren't funny without the straight man. Right? Like you need someone who's maintaining that sense of reality. Otherwise, everyone knows it's a joke, and that makes it not funny because you're like, oh, no one there thinks this is real. But when you have a straight man there, they're like, this is true. So, and this is like the reality of that world. I think that might be him, although they're really the straight man in that show might be one of the female characters too, which I don't think I'd be a good job.
Sell yourself short.
That's a great question, Serge. I like you asking him that. I have seen Noises Off. I think I remember that I saw it, and I looked it up because I knew you were going to talk about it today. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I do recognize that play. I probably saw it 23 years ago or something like that at the local community theater and remember it being entertaining. So that's I'm really glad you guys had a good time doing that.
Interesting because, like I said, I think this is the fourth time I've seen it, and the level of production makes a huge difference in it. I've seen it like professionally 3 times. The fourth time was when Sergey did it in college. Like the level of production makes a big difference, and the performances change, the direction change a little bit. Some things are always the same, but like the physicality of the actors, their choices, what sort of things that people are doing make a huge impact on a show like that. And when you see stuff more than once, you're like, oh, okay, I really liked that decision there, or ooh, why did they do that? Or like their timing's too slow, so it's not really hitting the right way. So like it can make a big difference. And we're just lucky that this was a really good one.
That's great. And Serge, I appreciate you reminding that was the name of the play because as you were describing, I was like, wow, that sounds really familiar, but I wasn't placing the name. And I remember you being that burglar in that play, which was still hilarious. I still talk to Rachel about when you had that line about the no bars, no
burglar alarms, and then break through the glass. And
no, you were perfect. You were perfect at that role. So I think it's awesome that you guys were able to do that. And I think what's cool about this is this kind of goes full circle back to Serge, what you opened with, right? Which is just talking about kind of that need for connection. I think it's great because even as, we mentioned in the last episode around having been best friends for so many years, life still gets in the way, right? And I think the great part about being best friends and having this type of stable relationship is that no matter what, whenever we are together, we just pick up like we were never apart. But the downside of that is that we can sometimes have no concept of time as to when we're not together, right? And so I think it's great that you guys are able to be intentional along with your wives to be able to get together to kind of still have that connection, that community, and build onto that much needed relationship that you were talking about earlier in this episode, Serge. And so I think it's great that you're able to kind of branch out with new relationships, but you're also able to establish firmer roots with long lasting relationships as well. So I think it's great that you guys are able to do that. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is just gain that opportunity to share the things you love with the people you love.
Well said, Mac.
All right. And that was our last best in the episodes. But that brings this episode 2 down for a landing. So as we start to put this thing on the ground, I would just want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to us go through our 4 best for this month. And so just a reminder, we are going to be recording and releasing these episodes every month. We will record them pretty much a month in advance. So if you hear us talk about timelines, they're probably about a month off from when you actually hear them. But our goal is to release these new episodes on the 4th of every month at 4:44 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, kind of going with the 4 best theme songs. So if you're trying to remember, hey, when's that new episode coming out? Just think of the number 4 and what would be 4 in the month and 4 during the day, and that's what you'll come up with. So 4th, 4:44 p.m. And then I would just say for all of our listeners out there is that I do want to remind you that we are on all major platforms, however you listen to podcasts. And so whether it's on Apple, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Amazon, Spotify, whatever you use, we are on the major platforms. And I would encourage you to whatever major platform you're listening to this podcast on, that you remember to subscribe and rate us. just because that helps notify you whenever new episodes are coming out. But then also when you rate the episode, it helps make it more visible for those other listeners or other potential listeners who haven't discovered us yet. So would
But
appreciate
only
it.
good ratings. Don't give us a bad rating. Just ignore rating us. Otherwise.
Yep. Give us the good ratings. Shameless plug. Actually, I don't even know if that was shameless. That was borderline shameful, Mac, but it was a plug all the less. Okay. But with that, we are going to land this plane and just thank everybody for tuning in for this episode of The Four Bests. And we'll see you next month.
For best friends since way back when. Steel town roots in a story to spin. Pittsburgh streets in our bones. The four best parts, the four best hearts. This month we live it loud. This month we break the clouds. Childhood ties that never